What's email? What does it mean?
Communication is the imparting or exchanging of information or news.
The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place.
Conversation is the oral exchange of sentiments, observations, opinions, or ideas.
Forbes Books Radio presents The Conversation with Clinton M. Padgett.
Joining me on the podcast today is Bob Chapman, the CEO of Barry-Wehmiller, a $3 billion global capital equipment business with more than 12,000 team members, and author of the Wall Street Journal best-selling book, Everybody Matters, The Extraordinary Power of Caring for Your People Like Family. Bob has spoken at TEDx, Conscious Capitalism events, and the CEO Global Leaders Forum, to name just a few. He became the senior executive of Barry-Wehmiller in 1975 at age 30, when the 80-year-old business had only $20 million in revenue, outdated technology, and a very weak financial position. Despite the obstacles, Bob applied a unique blend of strategy and culture over the next 40 years in leading Barry-Wehmiller through more than 115 successful acquisitions and growing the business to $3 billion. Bob, welcome to the podcast.
Appreciate the opportunity to share my message and look forward to your questions.
There's so much great content in your book, Everybody Matters, great title, by the way, that I can't wait to dive in. But before I do, I think a brief background would be beneficial. You didn't start out to be the CEO of Barry-Wehmiller, did you?
No, I actually, I don't ever remember making a conscious. I became an accountant. I can't say the greatest compliment somebody ever gave me is I can't believe you're an accountant, which was a compliment. But I made a decision to be an accountant, and shortly thereafter, my dad asked me to join the firm that I had never even considered joining, the family company.
And from there that started, right? You didn't start as a CEO, though. You kind of grew up in the company.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, the company was a struggling company. My dad had bought into the company in the 50s, and then some finance company agreed to lend the company the money to buy out the Wehmiller family, the last remaining shareholders. So my dad's $30,000 investment in the 50s ended up being 60% of the company, about 1965. But it was struggling. It was a struggling old company. So I never even thought about going to work with a company. I was going to be a partner at Price-Waterhouse. That was my career. And all of a sudden, my dad, who I had not much of a relationship with, saw me do well in accounting, do well at graduate school, do well at Price-Waterhouse. And he approached me one day in about February of '69 and said, "Would you consider working for the company?" My title was going to be somebody he could trust. Okay, so no definition of role. He just was so tired of working in an environment where he didn't feel he could trust his team. So, and I had, again, done well all of a sudden in accounting, was doing well at Price-Waterhouse, was having dialogue. So it gave us a conversation. So that's how it began. The beauty is it began that way. No definition of role. So guess what I did? I did everything. I got involved in engineering, customer service, production, accounting, international license agreement, sales. So it was at a very young age. It gave me a real foundation to understand the business on my own initiative. Well, while he had somebody he could trust. So that was my first 6 years in the company before my dad suddenly passed away in 1975. When I was 30.
Now, you described the culture when you first went to work there as not being probably the culture you would have adopted, right? It's a bit of a toxic environment, micromanagement.
Yeah, the way I describe it is the company had struggled for years with, old technology, had a lot of issues with the family, successive generations not doing well. So the company was financially weak, technology weak, and therefore the people remaining were fine people, but they were just holding on in the ship as it was going down, and I'd say to you from 53 when my dad joined it to 75 when he passed away, he kept it alive, but he couldn't give it a future. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the environment I stepped into. So the culture was probably a typical old family culture, guys have been around a long time, going to be around a long time. The amount of And so if you go from kind of public accounting where you have a lot of pretty sharp people into a company that, is kind of on its death spiral, it's a real contrast. I used to say if I didn't have a brilliant idea every day, I knew I'd miss something. It just because such old practices. And my dad was tired. He was physically tired. He'd already had 2 heart attacks. He was, the struggles keeping out of bankruptcy were tough. So it was interesting to me because I had this intellectual curiosity about every part of the business. It's a little bit like getting in and see how a clock works. So now when you look at the time, you appreciate what's behind those hands, because
Right.
you see, all of a sudden you realize how all those gears intermesh to create time. So that's what I had a chance to do. I got to see how the gears worked. So when my dad passed away, I virtually was ready to step in, even though I was only 30 years old.
Okay. Well, full disclosure, as we were talking about before we started recording, I'm a people person, even though I'm an engineer. And I really liked when I read the following statement out of the book. Machinery can increase productivity in measurable increments, and new processes can create significant efficiencies. However, only people can stun you with quantum leaps. Only people can exceed your wildest dreams, and only people can make you feel great at the end of the day. Everything we consider valuable in life and business begins and ends with people. That was a mic drop moment for me. How did you arrive to that thought?
It was, again, to go from accounting and a struggling business, I had a series of transformations. It's the only way I can describe them. It wasn't a mentor. It wasn't a book I read. It wasn't a consultant came in. It started in 1997 when I acquired this company in South Carolina. I went in as the new owner, CEO, on a Monday morning to be there the first day I owned it. And it was March of 97. And what happens in March in South Carolina, everybody's talking about March Madness.
Yeah.
Okay. What basketball team? So I'm in having a cup of coffee in the lunchroom of this company now that I'm the owner of. They don't know me because I don't know them, because I have a meeting that's going to start at 8. And I was just having a cup of coffee. So I watched how much fun people were having talking about which team won, how much they were going to win in the office pool. It was just fun. The closer it got to 8 o'clock, you could just see the fun go out of their body. Okay? And so I didn't know it at the time, but I went back and thought this through. What I realized that day is, why can't business be fun? Why do we call it work? And so what that resulted in is I created some games spontaneously. I just started creating some games that aligned to value creation. So if you win the game, the company wins. Like whoever sells the most spare parts wins each week. And I saw dramatic changes in behavior, customer service. I mean, I was astounded. Stimulated by March Madness, I tried to create games at work that aligned with value creation. And it was profound. So that was the first revelation. I was just astounded how people behaved when they were having fun. And if you align the fun to value creation, customer satisfaction. So anyways, we were amazed. Second thing is I was at church probably a couple of years later, and the rector of our church was my mentor. He gives phenomenal sermons, vibrant church. And one day I got up from the church service and I looked at my wife and I said, Cynthia, Ed has only got us for 1 hour a week. We have people in our company for 40 hours a week. We are 40 times more powerful than the church to impact people's lives. And as I walked out of that church that day, I had a revelation that resulted in the revelation: business could be the most powerful force for good in the world if we simply cared about the people we had the privilege of leading. So that was the second. The third is the one people remember the most because everybody can relate to it, which is the wedding story. And I was at a wedding, watched my friend's wedding. He was walking his daughter down the aisle. She was precious. He was proud. Everybody was in awe of how precious she looked, how handsome the young man was. And as the service went on, I said to myself, oh my God, all 12,000 people that work for us around the world are just like that young man and young lady. They're somebody's precious child that's been put in our care, and we can have a dramatic impact on their life. And so that day, that was the biggest transformation, because I stopped looking at people as a source for my success. The receptionist, the engineer, the accountant, the hourly worker, the storeroom clerk. And I started seeing people as somebody's precious child that's been placed in my care, which When you see them in that context, it is dramatically different than when you see them as a function for your success. You might be nice to them, but they're basically a function. You need them for you to be successful. And what truly human leadership, what transformed me is it changed the way I saw everything. Because all of a sudden, I saw people as our purpose, okay? And I was interviewed by Washington University organizational development professors, 10 years ago, because they'd heard about the early stages of our culture. After an hour and a half interview, they said, Mr. Chapman, you're the first CEO we've ever talked to that never talked about your product. And I said, I've been talking about our product for the last hour and a half. It is our people. I will not go to my grave proud of the big machinery we built. I'll go to my grave proud of the people who did that. And that was a revelation to these professors that the purpose of business is to give people a chance to express their gifts as individuals, team members, so they can, create it in part of an economic system. But that's just the system. But our focus should be on the people, because that's what we learned. Those three revelations. Why can't business be fun? We have people in our care for 45 hours a week, and everybody are not functions for our success. There's somebody who's been placed in my care, and the way I treat them will have a profound impact on their personal life and their health. Because remember, the person you report to at work is more important to your health than your family doctor. And I was never taught, never heard, never learned in my career that the way we would lead at work would affect the way our team members would go home and treat their spouses, treat their kids, and behave in our communities. Does that make sense?
It does. And there was a lot of stories in the book that recount that. In fact, it resonated with me because you would do something to reward the person at work, and yet you would hear later about the impact it had at home. And that was not just the one-off story. There were several stories where that was happening. So, everybody gives lip service. So people are our most important asset, but you guys really, you flip the whole thing on its head, and people is what you're all about, which I think is fascinating.
And the interesting thing is when we were brainstorming the name of the book, and we had Simon sunk down at the at the Penguin Book team, and we said, what's the name of this book? And if you said it before, the idea that everybody matters, not some people matter, but everybody matters, that touches my heart when you think about that. The person driving to the airport in a cab, the person serving you a hot dog at the football game. These are people with families, and when you treat them with respect and dignity, we could profoundly heal the brokenness we're feeling in the world right now. But when we see people as a means for our success instead of the purpose of our success, then we have the brokenness we have today. We have economic prosperity, but we don't have human prosperity.
Yeah, I think a couple things resonated with me in that first story you told about playing the games. Yeah. First of all, I grew up in South Carolina, so I was obviously drawn to that story. But the other one was the negative part of my brain said, well, then I'm going to try to win the game, and I'm going to not get you the sale. I'm going to make sure I get that sale. But then you tell the story about how there was somebody who was really struggling and not getting to the 20,000, whatever the point was. And somebody else said, well, I don't need these $2,000 to win the sale, to win the award. So here, you can have them this time. And people were starting to help each other, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. Remember that day in 1997 when I was having my cup of coffee, this was a big acquisition. I was proactive, and I was going to meet with the customer service team. I had no idea what my agenda was. Just meet with them and talk to them and get to know them. I had nothing on agenda. But when I sat down with them, because of the stimulation of watching March Madness, my wife hates it when I say this, but out of me popped. Okay, we're going to play a game. It had to be stimulated by March Madness because I was watching that. And when people started playing a game, they started having fun. Remember before that, Clint, every day they went into work. They sat down at their desk. Customer called up with a demand. They answered the phone. They put it in. Then another customer called it, and it was just, how was your day? Fine. I had a couple of customers get mad at me. Somebody else was nice. But it was like playing basketball with no scoreboard. Turns out when we put the game in, everybody knew exactly where they were every day, and they could go home and say, boy, I had a good day. I did 100,000 or 50,000, whatever the number was. It gave them, again, it's just like playing basketball without a scoreboard, and all of a sudden you put the scoreboard. So look at we're actually winning, and the team, and we're only 2 points behind. And if we did a 3-point shot, we'd win. So taking the sports analogy, it dramatically changed the dynamics and fun. They were high-fiving each other when they made it. Before, they just walked in every day, put an order in, put another order in, I don't know, how you doing? Well, I guess I'm doing fine. So so many people play the game of business and they have no idea what the score is.
Right.
They can't go home at night and say, I had a good day, didn't have a good day, but tomorrow. So we don't think about that. But we would never play a sport without a scoreboard, right?
Nobody would watch.
Right. So I mean that revelation, that was, and again, our revenue went up 20% with that game, which astounded me. I did it to have fun. I had no idea what the behavior would be, and I went back and asked people, why did our revenue go up by 20%? I don't understand. If somebody calls in, they need a shaft, they're not going to buy 2 shafts. Just if they only need a shaft, right? So how could it? And this one lady said to me, her name is Vicky, fabulous person. She said, Mr. Chapman, before we started these games, I thought I was nice to the customers. Now I'm really nice to the customers because I want to win. I thought, oh my God. I mean, I never would have thought. Never had any. So this uncharted path we took revealed dramatic changes in culture. I'll tell you, we implemented this game up in Akron, Ohio, at our other business because we had such dramatic results in customer service, performance, joy, everything. And I went up there, and the team said, we don't want to do it. I said, what do you mean you don't want to do it? And they said, Mr. Chapman, we're a team. We work together. And what you're going to do is you're going to divide us because you're going to pit one against the other. And I said, look, guys, I didn't come up to a survey. You're going to do it, and you're going to like. Because I was so confident. And despite all the dramatic reservations, we did it. And guess what? They loved it. Matter of fact, the one lady said, well, Mr. Chapman, if I'm down in the storeroom expediting an order for a customer, and another customer calls in with a big order I've been working on, but I'm down in the storeroom, it's not fair that I don't get the credit for it. I said, well, maybe the next time you ought to call down to the storeroom instead of walk down the storeroom. So you know what she did? She went out on her own initiative and got a portable phone, so she wouldn't miss a call from a customer, even if she's storeroom. So the creativity, the ingenuity, the fun, the high-fiving, going to TGI Fridays on Friday night to have a beer because they had a great week. They never had that. So the only thing I would wish, Clint, is I wish we could bring this scoreboard to everybody in the company, because so many people work in roles where they go in every day, they do their job, they go home, they have no idea how they're doing. They just kind of do your job. And it's like playing a sport with no scoreboard. Don't you kind of want to know how you're doing? So this customer service area led to us trying to do this in a few other areas. But it is so many people in this world simply go in every day. They go to their job. They're told what to do. Nobody asks them what they think. They get 10 things right. They don't hear a word. They get one thing wrong, and they get their ass chewed out. That is why we have so much anxiety and depression, because we don't treat people with respect and dignity and give them a sense of meaning and purpose so they can go home at night feeling that what they did mattered, okay? And that's kind of that's the journey we're on, to show everybody that they matter, okay?
Yeah, you have a lot of stories where I also like where the people, you invite the people on the shop floor basically to go kind of building off of the lady who put the portable phone down in the cage, and you invite the people running the equipment to reinvent how should this flow, and you taught. There's a story where basically senior people got together and created it, but the flow wasn't right, and you had consultants come in, the flow wasn't right, but when you invited the people on the shop floor to create the flow, it worked because you listened to the people that doing the work.
Yeah, a huge revelation for me was, I took management classes at business school, got a management degree, and I eventually got a job in management. So what did I think I was supposed to do? I was supposed to manage people. I was better educated. I was better paid. I had an office. So when people came to me, I told them what to do, and they would do it, and that felt good. That's what bosses do, right? we're smarter than you are. So when you got a problem, come to me and I'll tell you what to do. What this process did, it flipped everything. Okay. Guess who knows how to really do it well? The people doing it. Never would have occurred to me. For me to go ask people in the plant how to do it better would mean I'm dumb. That they're smarter than me, and we can't do that because then I'd have to give them. So what this did is it said, and again, remember the story of Steve in the book. The gentleman said, Mr. Chapman, before you bought our company, I worked here 30 years. I came in every day, punched my card, went to my machine. I was told what to do. Nobody ever asked me what I thought. And I realized that when I go home at night, I didn't feel very good about myself, and therefore I wasn't very good to my wife. He said, since you've come in and we started working in teams to improve, where you actually ask my opinion, that I get to contribute to making things better, I realize that today I go home and I feel better about myself, and when I feel better about myself, I'm nicer to my wife. And when I'm nicer to her, she talks to me. I said, Steve, we're going to have a new metric in our business, the reduction in the divorce rate in America. Okay? Because what happens... Well, I had no idea until that. It never occurred to me that the way we treat people at work would affect the way they go home and treat their spouse and behave their kids. But when we teach in our university now people to become leaders, not managers,
Right.
95% of the feedback is how it improves their marriage and their relationship with their children. Business could be the most powerful force for good in the world if we simply learn to care for the people we have the privilege of leading. Flipping everything on its end, just the exact opposite of what I was taught and what I experienced, where it's always about me and my success, okay? Never about you. You're here to make me successful, okay? And it just flips everything. But it would heal the brokenness of the world dramatically, okay? Because people are paid well, they have good vacations, they have bouncy houses, vacations, dog pets, but they're not treated with respect and dignity. They're used instead of cared for.
Yeah, you mentioned it in the book as well, and I know that I've heard this kind of a similar quote before. You pay for us to do the work. You get our heads and our hearts for free, right? But you don't use those typically.
Yeah.
So
the expression, I learned that probably 15 years ago. We paid people for their hands for years, and they would have given us their heads and their hearts for free if we just knew how to ask them. And what truly human leadership does is teaches you how to ask people with respect and dignity, how to engage their head and their heart and go home feeling valued. That is our goal, okay, is to send people home every day feeling that who they are and what they do matters, and that profoundly impacts the way they behave at home, in our communities, and would heal a lot of the brokenness we're feeling in our streets, in our communities, in our schools, today, because people don't feel valued, they feel used.
Right. I mean, you have so many good anecdotes in the book about transformation of people, from Randy to Randall and his transformation. But one of the ones that resonated with me was the story of Ken, who wanted to be a teacher, but someone dismissed his dream as to being a teacher, so he did too. And it spoke to me because early in my career, I wanted to be a teacher, and my boss said, no, you're not doing that. And luckily I'm stubborn, so I kept at it, and now I've taught thousands of people across the globe. But I just love the transformation stories that you tell in the book.
Yeah, Bill, you're at Harvard after he visited. He's a world peace negotiator. He said what he saw at Barry-Wehmiller, which is really meaningful to me, is he saw courageous patience. In other words, Randall is one of everybody's favorite stories because he was a really tough, leave me alone guy. I don't care about your programs. Just let me do my job and leave me alone. He went from there to now teaching at our education system about leadership. I mean, his is an amazingly powerful, hopeful story. Because if Randall couldn't have been more outside the acceptance of this, and now is one of them. Everybody loves to meet Randall because his story gives you hope for everybody. And so, everybody. What courageous patience means that everybody's life journey is unique. You cannot treat everybody the same because everybody is uniquely different. You can't. I have 3 kids or 6 kids. You can't treat them all the same because they're all uniquely different. And so, even with our 12,000 people, you've got to flex everybody's got a different journey. Everybody's at a different place in the journey. And what we do is we give you time. Bill Urey describes it as a bus going around a circuit. The bus pulls up. Clint, would you like to join us in Truly Human Leadership? Clint says, I've heard this stuff before. I'm not ready. We say, that's okay, Clint, because we'll be back. Bus drives around the circuit, comes up and says, Clint, want to open the door? You're welcome to join us when you're ready. And you say, I've seen enough. I feel I'm ready. And you walk on that. You walk on that bus. You're not pulled on that bus. That's what we call courageous patience. Knowing that everybody's at a different place. They've had different experience. They're not just all going to say, "Oh, this sounds great. Let me in the club." And so courageous patience said, "We're gonna open the door, and you're welcome to join us when you're ready." And the beauty of the law of early adoption is you get those first people walking the bus, then they see those people walking the bus, you get a few more people walking the bus, and pretty soon the bus is full. There's always a few people standing still at the bus stop because they never quite got there, and we respect that, as long as they're not hurting other people. So that's kind of what courageous patience is, and I think we need to do that because one size does not fit all because our lives are uniquely different.
Yeah, I was struck by how patient you were with all the different people because some people's journey was quite a long one and other people were quicker to adopt, as you said. So but I did like that bus analogy as well.
Yeah, well, it's a way to look at it because, the most common question I get, Clint, is what do you do about the people that don't get it? And, whether I'm in a church, a school, I speak in all parts of our society, and I always say, treat that person who you don't think gets it with respect and dignity like you'd like your son or daughter treated if they didn't get it. And they say, oh, that would be different. And I say, why is it different? That's somebody's son or daughter you're treating that way. And that standard of care, treat them no less than you want to be treated or you would like your son or daughter treated, okay? Because that wakes us up. Well, I wouldn't treat I could tell you 100 stories about that. But that is our standard of care. Treat them no less than you would like to be treated or you would like your son or daughter treated.
I'll end up pulling many quotes from the book, but here's one I really liked as well. There's no such thing as an underperforming team, only underperforming leaders.
Yeah. I would say to you that quite often we look at our, if you will, hourly workers, production workers, whatever, which is a disrespectful way to refer to them, but that's the common language. And I would say our team, and why aren't they doing better? We just need to get, but then we change leaders and all of a sudden that same team is doing exceptional. So leadership has the ability to bring people together with different ability as a team and create something special. We had years ago, we had a third baseman in the Cardinals in St. Louis, and he high-paid player and wasn't doing that well, so we traded him to Atlanta, Terry Pendleton. Well, guess what?
Thank you, by the way.
Yeah. Well, we were glad to get rid of him because he wasn't that good. And guess what? Terry Pendleton goes to the All-Star game almost every year, top player. And we said, wait a second. That's the guy that was kind of seemed to be an average player, third baseman for us. He goes to Atlanta, same person, same sport, different coach, different leader, okay?
Right.
And so quite often we judge the person as opposed to the leader. Same person under a different leader could be dramatically better. Just like teachers. Is the student the problem, or is it the way we're teaching that student the problem? Ronald Reagan always had an expression, he believed in the goodness of people. I think that's a foundation. We believe in the goodness of people, and we're constantly looking for it and then celebrating it when we see it. So we focus on the goodness, not the brokenness of the world.
Right. Another thing I think that you did that was unique and powerful, everybody has the platitudes and their culture pasted on the wall, but you guys actually took what you call the guiding principles of leadership, and it's a pretty intimidating title, by the way, but you took them off the wall where so many go to die, and your team, you embraced them by simply asking the question, what are we doing that doesn't match up to what we say here? And I thought that was so powerful.
Well, remember, this all was occurring around the time of the Enron scandal, where the image of corporate leadership was very low because of the scandal at Enron. And so we accidentally created these guiding principles of leadership because we were so amazed at all these little kind of random initiatives and the profound impact. We said, there's something going on here. And we sat down, a group of about 20 of us for a day, and said, what is going on? We started writing things down on board. All of a sudden we said, oh my God, those are guiding principles of leadership. And the golden rule on top of that is we're going to measure success by the way we touch the lives of people. So I went to our chief people officer, and we were so proud of this document. She said, Bob, Enron had beautiful statements on the walls. They just didn't live them. And I said, I'm not going to put them on the wall. I'm going to put them in people's heads and hearts. And I started going out into the world, sitting down with team members and say, these are guiding principles leaders we have developed. Where are we living them and where are we not? And in my first visit to South Carolina, the same plant where the games occurred, this was just profound. A gentleman raised his hand, Mr. Chapman. I said, I got a question. I said, what's that? He said, Mr. Chapman, recently I was given the privilege of flying to Puerto Rico to install one of our machines. And I flew down there, got in a hotel, I worked with the customer, and after a couple of weeks, I came back. And I was very proud to represent the company. But as I walked in through the lunchroom with this lady that works in accounting department, we live in the same neighborhood, we got to a certain point, and she went left to turn to the office, and I went into the plant. I had to punch a card to validate I got here. She just sat down at her desk. She wanted to call home to see how her child was feeling, who wasn't feeling well when she left. She just picked up her phone at her desk and called him. I had to wait, get change, and call a payphone. Mr. Chapman, why do you trust her and you don't trust me? And I said, that is the most perfect question I've ever heard in my life. There is absolutely no reason. Forget about the time cards. You can get a cup of coffee anytime you want. We're going to put phones around the plant so you can use them. It never occurred to me I was treating you with disrespect. These are historic old practices between offices and production that send us unintended signal that we trust Mary in accounting, but we don't trust you in the machine shop. That was a revelation for me. So when you get out and ask people how you doing, you'll hear things that they saw things through a lens. The other example in that same visit, I was walking into the plant because the president wanted to show me something in the storeroom. And so we walk up to the storeroom area, which is caged in, and is locked, but there's people working inside. And Dan said, okay, would you open it? I want to show Mr. Chapman something. And I looked at Dan with one of these other moments, and I said, Dan, what did these people do wrong? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, you got them all caged up. They're locked up. He said, Bob, it's the storeroom. You got to secure the inventory. I said, Dan, so we're worried. We're sending a signal. We're worried unless we lock up the inventory, people are going to steal it. Is that what we're saying? Well, no, Bob, you've got to secure the inventory. I said, Dan, take the gauges down. Let's make a statement that we trust you, okay? And we're not going to lock people up in cages in this plant. That was another profound moment. So sometimes the lens through which you look at things changes profoundly, and you see the inhuman way we treat people, okay? I remember as an auditor in one company that when you walked out of the plant, you had to show them your briefcase or your lunchbox to confirm you weren't stealing anything. I mean, that is pitiful. If we don't trust the people in our span of care, that is foundationally horrible. And what does it say to you? You can't trust anybody, okay? So I would say to you, Clint, this journey, when we went out and started listening, we call them listening sessions, people told us amazing things that never would have occurred to us. Never would have occurred to us.
Well, I think what separates you from everybody else also is the fact that not only did you ask the question, but you implemented and listened to what they had to say and then executed against that, which some people ask questions they don't really want the answers to. Yeah. You actually wanted the answer, and then you showed people, I hear what you say. In fact, we're going to make things better because of the feedback you gave me, which of course then opens other people up to give feedback.
Yeah, I remember in that case where we said you don't have to punch your time card anymore. You can use the phone when you want. You can get a cup you want. We just eliminated those differences on the spot. The VP of manufacturing at the time said, holy cow, here it goes. We're going to have chaos in the plant. I said, that's pitiful. That is pitiful. You feel of people that way. That it's okay in the office, but boy, in the plant, can't trust them. You need to have them punch in. If they're 5 minutes late, they get docked. I mean, it's pitiful, the differentiation, because they're all somebody's precious child. They all simply want to know they matter. And so we just, as we saw these issues, we just said, they don't make any sense. Eliminate them. So, right. So anyway, it was that challenge who came from our chief people officer was a perfect challenge for me, because I said, We're not going to put them on the wall. We're going to put them in people's heads and hearts. And to this day, 15, 17 years later, I still have listening sessions all over the world. What are we doing well, and what can we do better? Okay? We're one of the few companies, I think, that does this, because honestly, we want to hear from them. And, now with Zoom and Teams, we can talk to diverse group people all over the world, not just people in one plant. We can talk to people in a division from Hamburg to from China to India. So it's really been a powerful. It's basically saying we care. Tell us,
Right.
It doesn't mean we do everything everybody ever says, but we listen to them and we validate that we want to hear their voice. So, it's one of the unique things we started because of that challenge. It was the Enron scandal that challenged us to not put things on the wall, to try and live the values, not just, how many people say, how many organizations, people are our greatest asset? How many
Everybody.
Yeah, right. How many, that's a cute statement, but would you say to your family's your greatest asset? I mean, would you call it an asset? It's our family. Why do we call them assets? Human
Right.
resources. We need metal and we need people so we can make money. So anyway, it's the language of business. I hate the language of business. I hate the word manager because I have come to the conclusion the word manager means someone who manipulates others for his or her success. And leadership is the stewardship of the lives entrusted to you. Dramatically different view. Managers manipulate people for organizational and personal success. Leaders profoundly care for people towards human success.
Well, that concludes part one of my interview with Bob Chapman, Wall Street Journal bestselling author of Everybody Matters and CEO of the $3 billion global capital equipment company, Barry-Wehmiller. Coming up in part two of our conversation, we'll discuss why he feels it's important to engage with the team face-to-face in their visioning process.
Everybody's opinion matters. We listen to it. If I just am told what to do, what ownership do you have of that vision? Very little. You have job security that drives it, but not personal commitment. So when you engage people in a meaningful process from what we've learned about looking at the past, from what we know about the competitive landscape in our markets, how can we create a better future for everybody? And when you involve people in that and then you share it with people, they understand where you're going. Things make sense. If nothing else, you validated their input. And they've heard other people's input, and that collective vision engages people more deeply. Which are you more committed to? A goal that you're told you got to achieve, or a goal that you created yourself?
Thanks for listening to The Conversation with Clinton M. Padgett. To find out more about Clint, go to projectsuccess.com or pick up Clint's book, The Project Success Method, at Amazon.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.